Welcome, fourth graders. Today we are talking all about area. Area is the amount of surface inside a closed boundary. I want you to underline that word inside. It's measured in square units. So let's start off by finding the area of some rectangles here. We have a rectangle with a length of 3 and a width of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So go ahead and label your rectangle. It is a 3 by 4. So if we wanted to find the area or the amount of surface inside, well, we could count up one by one, or we could see that we had a 3 by 4, 3 times 4 equals 12 square units. Right? You could use the multiplication problem. That's much faster than going 1, 2, 3, 4. So I want you to pause the video and go ahead and solve for the area for numbers, the rectangles in numbers 2 and 3 here. Make sure you write an equation. Remember, an equation has to have an equal sign. That's right. So make sure you write your complete equation and don't forget to include your units. I will teach you a little shortcut. Instead of having to write square every time, you could write SQ with a period. So that's the same thing if you want a little shortcut there. Go ahead, solve numbers 2 and 3 and press play when you are ready to see the answers. Ta-da! Check your work against these answers so that you had a 2 by 3 array equals 6 square units, or a 4 by 5 array equals 20 square units. And I bet you're thinking to yourself, writing a multiplication equation, especially once it got up to 20 square units, was so much easier than having to count one by one. So that brings us to our formula. The area of a rectangle, drum roll please, equals length times width. And remember, mathematicians use a cursive L for length times W, lowercase w, for width. And you probably realize that because you had already done that every time to make a shortcut for yourself. You just had to multiply length and width and get the area. I'd like to compare area and perimeter of rectangles. So we said the area is the amount of surface inside. The amount of surface inside. And that is the key word. Underline it a million times. Area is inside. Whereas we learned before that perimeter is the distance around the outside of a shape. In our case, we've been using rectangles for both. But remember, when we were talking about perimeter, I would have you stick your pointer finger in the air and trace a rectangle in the air and say perimeter. Do that with me. Perimeter. That's going around the outside. Whereas my trick for area is I pretend I'm using the whole palm of my hand to shade in a whole circle, and I say area is inside, and I just wave my hand like crazy, like I'm trying to shade in the inside of an entire rectangle. So do that with me. Don't wave your hand too crazy because I don't want you to hurt yourself or anybody. But wave your hand. Area is inside. Excellent. And when we were talking about perimeter, since it was just the distance or the length around the outside, we would use standard units of length, like centimeters, or feet, or inches, or yards. I bet you could think of more. Go ahead and add some more if you can think of some other units of length that we'd use for perimeter. But the difference for area, remember, we just said we're multiplying one side times the other. And perimeter, we were just adding. Now we're multiplying. So now it's the units squared. Remember how we talked about square numbers yesterday? It's this units squared. So a shortcut for that is you can write centimeters squared. That's called an exponent. That's raised a little bit higher than the unit. Or you could write it like this, square centimeters, same thing. And we can go ahead and do that to any of these standard units of length when we're talking about area, feet squared, or square feet. So same goes for inches, same goes for yards. Make sure you have that filled out in your notes. Now, we're going to find the area and perimeter of this rectangle. That's something I know you can do because we now know the formula for area, and you remember from last time our formula for perimeter, adding up all the sides, the distance around. So please pause the video to solve this problem. Play back when you're ready to see the answer. You ready to check your work now? Hopefully you got an area of 12 and a perimeter of 16. But if you're yelling at the screen right now saying, no, Mrs. George, you forgot something, then you are correct. What did I forget? Did you notice anything missing? My units, of course. This is a rectangle. These are lengths. They're in centimeters. So my perimeter, if I just added up all the centimeters, my perimeter is still in plain old centimeters. But for my area, I multiplied 6 centimeters times 2 centimeters. So my units would be centimeters squared. Always remember to include those units. Have fun finding area and perimeter of some rectangles today.